The breaking news that in this major reversal, Disney will bring Jimmy Kimmel back. That is a long ways from how they sounded last week, and that will be tomorrow. Disney and ABC announcing Kimmel goes back on the air despite these government Trump efforts to silence him tomorrow. Here is the statement. I'm going to read you exactly what Disney said so you can make sense of it yourself. Last Wednesday, we made the decision, these Disney executives say, to, quote, suspend production on the show, referring to Kimmel, to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. They continue today, quote, we have spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday. So that is the news, and that's how they're putting it. Of course, there's a lot more to this, and we're going to get into that right now. Donald Trump's FCC chair, the government, set this in motion. Nobody who's followed this really denies the fact that this was the government demanding censorship and Disney and ABC responding, caving, issuing an indefinite suspension that at the time was described as indefinite. It certainly wasn't described as 3 days. It's just about the number of Kimmel shows that have been suspended, the Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, and he's back tomorrow. So this is a big change. The government wanted to silence Kimmel, and it seemed the night that this began, the news breaking actually in this hour, that they were getting somewhere with that. So now, 5 days later, Disney's decision to restore Kimmel's show, to reverse course on what they said was the initially right thing. Now, the opposite, apparently, is what they think is right, whether that means right for ABC and its standards, or right for Disney as a corporation, or right in the broader sense of free speech in our country right now. And Disney is not just any company, you know that, but they also have stakeholders in what we might call the creative community, writers, artists, comics, to say nothing of all the journalists and political people at ABC News. So they were facing this massive backlash to one of the greatest government crackdowns in public admitted since the McCarthy era. About the creative community, I'll give you an example. Hundreds of actors, musicians, and directors signed what was a rushed and growing open letter. I mean, more people were joining that in real time up and through today and joining this effort, defending free speech. Many of these people saying it doesn't matter whether you agree with what was criticized about Kimmel or other things he or anyone has said. The whole point is free speech, not government censorship. Other artists boycotting the premiere of a Disney documentary. A major musician, Sarah McLachlan, skipping the red carpet for her own related company film in protest. It was just getting started. What happened inside the FCC, ABC government censorship war was not being contained. It was spreading to a wider war. Disney has other business and commercial and cultural interests, and they had Marvel stars from Pedro Pascal to Mark Ruffalo to Marissa Tomei speaking out against the suspension. They had consumers, as we showed you last week, canceling Disney Plus, and many other voices, including people who don't agree with Kimmel all the time or don't oppose Trump all the time, sounding the alarm against what was very clearly an admitted, possibly illegal, Donald Trump anti-free speech effort.
When the government begins to interfere, when the government says, I'm not pleased with you, so we're going to orchestrate a way to silence you, it's the wrong direction for our country.
Someone can say something they shouldn't and get taken off the air, but the government cannot apply pressure to force someone to be silenced.
Whoopi Goldberg making that distinction on an ABC program just today, The View. And the distinction she makes is important. I'm going to say this once before I show you a couple more details. We've covered this story. We're a program that has people on from all sides. We've had a lot of Trump officials on this program. We've had a lot of Democrats and people in the opposition on this program. And we've had a heck of a lot of other people, artists, people in that creative community I mentioned on this program. And we've always talked about the need for dialogue. And dialogue can, of course, include a negative public reaction. You say something and someone else says something. And we go back and forth. And that's the messy process of civic discourse in a democracy with a First Amendment. And I've told you before, if you haven't watched this program, on a more personal, professional note, before I was doing this job, I practiced First Amendment law. These are areas of great debate with a lot of important history of people who have fought and sometimes taken great risks to have the right to uphold First Amendment speech in this country. What is not allowed, separate from public criticism, rebukes back and forth, is the government coming in, as Whoopi Goldberg stated there quite simply, to censor, to abuse government power, the power to tax or to fine, to imprison, to do retaliation or even regulation in the service of censorship. This is fundamental. It's why it's the First Amendment, not the 10th, not the 20th. It's the very First Amendment our founders put in the Constitution. Congress shall pass no law abridging freedom of speech or the press. So here we are. And while people may observe this and say, okay, Ari, but Trump has done a bunch of other things this year in the second term that also some courts have found unlawful, that also have violated parts of the Constitution, that also seem wrong. Why is this one so big? And part of the answer may be that he picked a very strong target in a very famous, well-known, and frankly well-liked comic who's made fun of a lot of people. Certainly Kimmel criticizes Trump, but he's criticized other things and politicians, and did it in such a blatant, ham-fisted way that he all but lost the case before it went to court. More on that later tonight. But we have this talk show with this comedy and criticism publicly named as a target. The View that I just showed you, plus Kimmel, which we know is a target, plus NBC's Tonight Show, which isn't even that political, which Trump named last week as his next target after the backlash, the sanction from the FCC on Kimmel. Now to the bottom line. Disney's stock took a hit during this whole crisis. You can see that there. Customers began canceling their subscriptions, not just to, say, ABC or Kimmel, but to the entire portfolio of Disney products. There are many ways to measure this. I can tell you Disney hasn't exactly announced just how much money they've lost or subscriptions they've lost. It's probably not in their business interest to fuel their own boycott. But one way you can look into this is Google Trends, where you see the normal churn of people wanting to cancel Disney, which could be for any reason. You could just say, oh, I'm tired of it, or I need to save money. But that's the normal churn on your left. And, of course, around the suspension, this huge spike, according to Google Trends, of people just searching for how to do it. 12-month highs. At one point, Disney Plus's cancellation page crashed because so many different people were saying, if Disney is against free speech like this, we don't want any Disney product. Now, why am I showing you this if you say, okay, the news already occurred and Kimmel's back? Why are we talking about how we got here? But how we got here is very important. When people fight, there's a fighting chance. When people speak, efforts to silence speech run into the brick wall of a lot more people. And not everyone's in the position to use economic power. A lot of people are just trying to get by. But someone who might already have a Disney subscription and have the disposable income to have, these days they want you to have 3 or 5 streamers, saying, I'm going to do something, even if your kids are going to miss the Disney products for a couple weeks, or you might miss your favorite show. In your own way, that civic activism saying no more Disney clearly had an impact. I'm not telling you what to do with your streaming services. I'm just reporting this works. And it works a heck of a lot better than what former Disney chair Michael Eisner, called the cowards at various companies and law firms who didn't fight at all, not even for a day. Pressure works. There's a new commentary here from John Oliver, who is in this sort of group of late-night comics who talk about politics and have found themselves uniquely attacked and targeted, discussing how he says one should stand up to a government bully.
Giving the bully your lunch money doesn't make him go away. It just makes him come back hungrier each time. Instead of rolling over, why not stand up and use 4 keywords they don't tend to teach you in business school? Not, okay, you're the boss. The only phrase that can genuinely make a weak bully go away, and that is, you make me.
That's John Oliver speaking. And while we will yet learn tomorrow exactly what Kimmel wants to share about this and what he's been doing, it is clear that he, unlike some of those executives I mentioned, some of those law firms I mentioned, and even some of those universities that are full of perfectly thoughtful, learned people in charge, that's what it takes to usually become a university president, but even what those people did, they didn't do what John Oliver called for. They caved immediately. So as we hit the inflection point in response to the censorship inflection of last week, we are going to dig into what worked here and what that means for the road ahead.